What if the single biggest sign of extreme intelligence isn't how well you perform on a test? What if it has nothing to do with solving complex math problems in seconds or memorizing an entire encyclopedia? Instead, what if the true signature of a genius-level mind is found in the quiet, strange, and often misunderstood habits you have when no one is watching? You might feel like you overthink, get easily distracted by curiosity, or need more alone time than most people. Society often labels these as flaws, as things you need to fix to be more productive or social. But what if those aren't flaws at all? What if they are the subtle background signals of a brain that processes the world on a completely different level? Stick with me, because the truth is far stranger and more fascinating than you've been led to believe. We've all seen the movie version of a genius, a quirky but brilliant character who sees the world in numbers and equations. But real-world psychological research paints a much different, more interesting picture of what a high IQ mind actually looks like. It's less about raw computational power and more about a specific, deeply ingrained psychological approach to reality. In this video, we're going to ignore the stereotypes and break down the 4 hidden psychological traits that truly define an extremely high IQ mind. These are the non-obvious patterns of thought and behavior that separate good thinkers from truly great ones. And the 4th trait is one that is so often mistaken for a major personality flaw, it might completely change how you see yourself. By the end, you'll not only understand these traits, but you'll also have a framework to start sharpening your own thinking. Let's dive into the first and perhaps most misunderstood trait of a truly intelligent mind. The first trait is an intense, almost inefficiently broad curiosity. Most people are curious when they need to solve a specific problem for work or school. Their curiosity is focused, practical, and goal-oriented. But the high IQ mind doesn't work that way. It's driven by a need to build a vast mental latticework of knowledge. They find themselves spending a Saturday afternoon learning about the history of Japanese pottery, not for a project, but just because. They'll fall down a Wikipedia rabbit hole that starts with quantum physics and somehow ends on the migratory patterns of monarch butterflies. From the outside, this looks like a distraction, a waste of time with no immediate payoff. Psychologists, however, have found that this need for cognition is the engine of creativity. It's this massive, seemingly random library of information that allows them to make connections that no one else sees. Think of Steve Jobs dropping in on a calligraphy class in college, an act of pure, useless curiosity at the time. Years later, that knowledge of typography became the soul of the first Macintosh computer, changing design forever. He wasn't playing checkers focused on the next move. He was playing chess, collecting pieces for an endgame he couldn't even see yet. So, if you feel a constant nagging pull to learn things with no obvious use, you're not broken. You're building your own mental latticework. This isn't distraction, it's intellectual exploration. But knowing these traits is one thing. Being able to use them is another. Stick around, because at the end, I'll give you a simple framework to start applying these ideas today. Now, this connects directly to our next point, which is one of the hardest for most people to accept. The second trait is a deep and genuine comfort with ambiguity and contradiction. Our brains are wired to seek certainty and closure, to quickly categorize things as good or bad, right or wrong. This mental shortcut saves energy, but it often comes at the cost of truth. The high IQ mind resists this urge to rush to judgment. They possess what the poet John Keats called negative capability. the ability to hold two opposing ideas in the mind at the same time without irritation or the need to choose one. They can believe a new policy is good for the economy but bad for the environment and simply sit with that uncomfortable reality. They don't need a villain or a hero. They can see the complex system at play. Imagine a CEO who, instead of firing the employee who made $1 million mistake, spends an hour with them asking, "What can we learn from this?" That CEO is demonstrating high cognitive flexibility. They are able to hold the contradiction that this person is both responsible for a massive failure and is now the most valuable person to teach the company how to avoid it in the future. This ability is crucial for solving truly wicked problems, the kind that don't have a single right answer in the back of the book. The urge to have a simple, quick answer is a trap for the average mind. True intelligence lies in the courage to say, "I don't know yet," and explore the messy, uncomfortable gray areas. Average minds seek answers. Great minds seek better questions. Think about a time you had to hold two opposing views. It's difficult, right? That difficulty is where real thinking begins. If you're finding these insights into the mechanics of thinking fascinating, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing to join a community of curious minds dedicated to thinking deeper. But here's where it gets really interesting, because our third trait changes the very fabric of reality for these individuals. It's a radically different perception of time. Most people operate on daily, weekly, or monthly time horizons, driven by deadlines and immediate rewards. The high IQ mind often plays a much longer game. They are engaged in projects that might not pay off for years or even decades. This is why they can sometimes seem slow, disengaged, or even lazy in the short term. They aren't motivated by the quick hit of dopamine from finishing a small task. They're driven by the compounding interest of knowledge and effort over time. Consider the person who crams for an exam versus the person who studies a little bit every day for a year. The first might get a good grade, but the second truly understands the subject. The high IQ mind is always aiming for that deeper level of mastery, and they instinctively know it takes time. It's the difference between a blogger chasing daily clicks and an author spending 7 years writing a masterpiece. They are engaged in a slow burn type of thinking that is nearly invisible to a world obsessed with immediate productivity. This isn't laziness, it's long-term intellectual investment. And to make that kind of investment, they need one crucial resource, which brings us to our fourth and final trait, the one we hinted at earlier. The fourth trait is a strong preference for, and even a deep need for, intellectual solitude. This is often misinterpreted as being antisocial, arrogant, or simply weird. But the psychological function of this solitude is critical. Remember that broad, intense curiosity from our first point? All of that information intake is incredibly cognitively demanding. Social interaction, especially small talk, is also a highly complex cognitive task. The high IQ mind needs periods of quiet solitude, not because they dislike people, but to process, consolidate, and find patterns in the vast amount of data they've collected. It's like a brilliant programmer who needs hours of uninterrupted silence to build complex code. Constant interruptions in meetings don't just slow them down, they break the entire structure they're building in their head. Solitude for them is not emptiness. It is a full and bustling workshop. This is where the scattered ideas from their broad curiosity get connected, where their comfort with ambiguity allows for novel solutions, and where the long-term plan is forged. So, if you often feel drained by constant social engagement and crave time alone to just think, you're not being antisocial. You're creating the necessary space for deep insight to emerge. It's not being antisocial, it's cognitive recharging. So, how do we tie all of this together into something you can actually use? We've covered 4 powerful traits: broad curiosity, comfort with ambiguity, a long-term view, and intellectual solitude. To make these actionable, you can use a simple framework I call the CALM mindset. C stands for curiosity. For 1 week, schedule 30 minutes to explore a random topic with absolutely no goal in mind. A is for ambiguity. The next time you're faced with a complex issue, write down 2 valid but opposing viewpoints on it and just sit with the contradiction for 10 minutes. L is for long-term. Identify one important personal or professional goal and ask yourself, what is one small action I could do today that will compound over the next 5 years? And M is for me time, or intellectual solitude. Schedule 1 hour of disconnected, uninterrupted time this week to simply think, walk, or journal. No phone, no podcasts, just you and your thoughts. Using the CALM method won't instantly raise your IQ score, but it will help you adopt the psychological posture of a truly effective thinker. So let's bring it all home. We've seen that genius isn't about being a human calculator. It's about having a voracious, unstructured curiosity. It's the courage to be comfortable with confusion and contradiction. It's the wisdom to play the long game in a world obsessed with short-term wins. And it's the discipline to carve out solitude for deep thinking. So the next time you think about a high IQ mind, don't picture someone who knows all the answers. Picture someone who is brave enough to explore without a map, who can live inside a question, and who values a quiet walk in the woods as much as a textbook. Intelligence is less about the hardware you're born with and more about the software you choose to run. Which of these 4 traits surprised you the most, or which one do you see in yourself? Let me know down in the comments. I genuinely love to read your perspective. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to subscribe for more content that helps you think deeper and live smarter. And if you liked this, you will love our breakdown of the 5 mental models used by billionaires, which you can watch right here.